Hi, welcome to this episode of History Hunters. This might be a short video, but I'm going to do a series of videos that were shot here in the Sacramento City Cemetery in Sacramento, California. Of course, Sacramento being the state capital. There are so many historical people buried here, but I'm here in front of this, it's not a mortuary, but it's a chapel, 1893. Once used as a mortuary, it held the body of James Butler, who was a very legendary founder of the mining district in Tonopah, Nevada. He ended up here in Sacramento, died in 1923. His body was stored here for a couple of years, I've been told. Now, you know Rodney Dangerfield, right? He's the one that said, I don't get any respect. James Butler, probably that would go for him as well, because I understand that he's buried underneath porta potties over here. I'll tell you all about it on this episode. So this is the mortuary chapel where James Butler's body had been laid for a couple of years, I was told by the caretaker here. I met her on the way in, and I have to tell you a story. James Butler was camping around Tonopah Springs, the 1900, when his burro wandered off, and he found the burro and chased it and reportedly threw a rock at it and discovered some promising ore. He continued his journey and showed samples to others who showed little interest. The reason I'm walking over here is because this is where James Butler is buried. Now, the story is that he was buried out here somewhere, and they wanted to put some asphalt through here. Well, they dug him up and they buried him over here. Now, supposedly, he's buried right underneath these porta potties. I'm not kidding. That's what I was told by a reliable source. But here you go. Here's the marker. Now, he's not buried here, apparently. He's buried over there. That's a terrible thought. James Logan Butler, Silver Baron of Tonopah, Nevada, 1855 to 1923. His Mizpah mine produced nearly half the $250 million in gold and silver taken in the Tonopah rush of the early 1900s. Now, there's a picture of him in his burro. He looked like that. So he continued his journey, and he showed the sample to others who showed little interest, but he returned to his home in Belmont, Nevada. Butler asked his young attorney Tasker Odie about his discovery, and he assayed it. The ore valued at more than $200 a ton. Jim's wife Belle urged him to return to the site and file 8 claims and removed several tons of ore for a 1/4 share. Wolves Brewer hauled the ore by horse and wagon to Austin, then by rail to Salt Lake City for smelting. Austin, Nevada, not Texas. The first shipment netted the partners $500, which was used to buy equipment needed for further mine development. Because the venture capital was difficult to obtain, Jim and Belle and their partners implemented an unusual concept of mine claim leasing by the foot. These leases, sealed by the handshake, gave the lessor 75% of all profits from its claim and greatly speeded up the mining process. Many of the miners got rich under this arrangement. The practice quickly spread to other mining districts. Butler sold their interest to a Philadelphia financier who formed the Tonopah Mining Company. The assets of this company exceeded $1 million. So to give you an idea of the wealth that came out of the Tonopah Mining District, it's estimated that they pulled 500 million tons of ore. It was worth $1.2 billion in today's value. You know, it strikes me that there's some people who are lucky. They're in the right place at the right time, whether it be fame. Think about Elvis Presley. There's so many talented people that never make the fame that he did. And it's certainly very true of all the people who've mined for riches and never found it. James Butler just walked out in the desert and found it.
Thanks to the man buried under the outhouses, or so it's believed, Tonopah, Nevada has a rich history in mining. Today, the town of 1700 is a tourist destination and honors Butler with the annual Jim Butler Days celebration. Thousands of visitors stay each year at the motel named in his honor. Of course, they also come to stay in the historic Mizpah Hotel, once the tallest building in Nevada until 1927. The quirky Clown Motel is also a must-see. Among the famous visitors to Tonopah was Wyatt Earp himself, and Howard Hughes married Jean Peters in Tonopah in room 33 of the L&L Motel, to be exact, on January 12, 1957. Of course, the motel is no longer standing because someone felt the need to tear it down. If you're tempted to think that Mrs. Belle Butler, who died in 1922, is buried underneath one of the portable toilets, she is not. You can find her more dignified gravesite at Oak Hill Memorial Park in San Jose. Their daughter Lottie, who died in 1963, is buried near her.
I think because this video is going to be a little bit short, I'm going to take you over to another section of the cemetery and show you a relic started the Spanish-American War. So for this other bit of history, we have to walk out here and find a yellow building. One of the first videos that I did at a cemetery was this cemetery. Oh gosh, probably 6, 7, 8 years ago. And it's a good one if you want to go find it, because we covered a lot of people who are buried here. There's even a Donner Party survivor. All right, so that's got to be the yellow building. I'm told that what we need to find is by the bell. There it is. I see it already. It's mounted. It's a piece of the battleship, the Maine, here in Sacramento, California. I wonder how many other cemeteries in the country have pieces of the Maine. You probably know from your history books the saying, remember the Maine, but there's a lot of controversy about that. And look at this, some kind of gearbox or something. Relic from the battleship Maine. Now, I have no idea what it is. Obviously it was used, there's a drive to turn this crank, and this is completely rusted. It went under. Now, what is the story of the Maine? Well, it was a Navy ship, an American Navy ship that sank in Havana, Cuba, in the harbor, February 15th, 1898, contributing to the outbreak of the Spanish-American War in April. American newspapers were engaged in yellow journalism to boost their circulation, and they claimed that the Spanish were responsible for the ship's destruction. The phrase, remember the Maine, to hell with Spain, became a rallying cry for action. Although the explosion was not a direct cause, it served as a catalyst that accelerated the events leading up to the war. The USS Maine was sent to Havana Harbor to protect U.S. interests during the Cuban War of Independence. She exploded and sank on the evening of February 15th, 1898, killing 268 sailors, or 3/4 of the crew. Those not killed by the blast were pinned between decks by the tangled wreckage and drowned almost instantaneously when the hull sunk. Of course, something this catastrophic was investigated by the Navy. They concluded that it was an explosion that happened when the ship hit a mine that was in the harbor. However, a lot of experts say that it was probably started and the coal bunker caught on fire. And Hyman Rickover, the famous atomic naval person that kind of was the impetus for Jimmy Carter's naval career, he concluded that it was probably started by the coal fire. So, can you imagine? American involvement in a war starts under some possibly erroneous information. That's the thing about history. Sometimes it's wrong. I'm not saying it is or isn't. The jury's out on this one. So, in 1911, the ship was actually brought up from the harbor. It was underwater that whole time. So what is that, 11, 12, 13 years? So that piece of equipment was also underwater that whole time. Now, you might be asking yourself, how did they pull up that ship in 1911 with the technology they had? Well, they built a cofferdam around it, and then the hull was patched, the ship was afloat, and then she was towed out to sea and sunk. So the Maine now lies on a seabed 3,600 feet below the surface. The ship's main mast is now a memorial at the Arlington National Cemetery. That's incredible to me. Now right here we have Cuba, Spanish War veterans, 1898 to 1902. And here, Spanish American War veterans. And obviously we're in the veterans section over here. I just find it very fascinating that a piece of naval history, war history, in Cuba. It's probably the farthest place from Cuba, Sacramento, California. A piece of it right here.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of History Hunters. If we did a good job, how about hitting the like button? And if you have a thought, we'd love to hear that as well in the comment section. Thank you so much.
Now, just to give you an idea of how much yielded from that district, so to give you an idea of how much, so to give you an idea of the wealth that came out of Tonopah, so to give you an idea of the wealth that came out of Tonopah, they had 50. So to give you an idea of the wealth that came out of the Tonopah mining district, it yielded 500 million tons. Oh my gosh. Okay, you want to do History Hunters? This is what you gotta deal with. Oh my gosh. Oh.